So what's the idea behind this installation?
The idea is to make a plenum of places of power. As the title of the installation says, we collected 196 national parliaments on the globe. We built the models in the scale 1 to 500. And then we didn't exhibit them on a horizontal plane, but we took them and put them on the wall. And something happens with these places of power. They lose much of their power. They become ornamental. They become
masked faces.
Yeah.
You know, some look like switches. You know, this is one of my favorites over there. And so the idea was that, you know, in changing the perspective, probably you get a different idea of what these very serious monumental buildings might be, and you start to reflect on the idea, what is monumentality in architecture at all? What is what we call the crisis of representation in architecture, which then leads to the crisis of representation that we know in politics. Many people don't feel represented in these systems anymore. So we try to, with a garden installation, you know, breaking up the very rigid grid of Josef Hoffmann and bringing in nature,
but letting nature climb over the wall into this guarded place. So you have the impression that something happened behind there, that these plants are crawling to this very, very classicist monument. The whole pavilion of Josef Hoffmann is an exhibit. It's important that this classicism is rigid, dogmatic, symmetric, and modernism is not. And what happens in the garden now is, in several steps, modernism taking over, and maybe even something that is beyond modernism in politics and in architecture.
And especially beyond control, to a certain extent.
How did you make the choices with the particular buildings?
There was no choices to make. It's all of them, you know. Yes. So that was an easy choice. 80% of these parliamentary buildings, you don't get any material data, whatever. So it was really difficult. And
photographs, yeah. Google Maps, reconstruction of these things, and probably we got it right 99% of the cases, and we are expecting somebody to come and say, this is not our parliament. That didn't happen.
We're even afraid. You know.
How did you place in alphabetical order? Did you do that consciously?
They are not what?
In alphabetical order, did you do that purposely?
Yes.
There was a discussion.
Yes. So there is aesthetics as an order, there is the alphabet as the most neutral possible order, and we found a way in between, because there are 2 digits in these country codes, and we really followed the first digit very precisely, and we used the second digit to play with sizes, and in some cases we also had to put them up because people could hurt their eyes by these. They look, the Westminster Hall, you know, the British Parliament looks like rockets coming out of the wall. Nobody has this impression if it stands like this. Everything is directed towards God usually, but if you do it like this, it's like a gun.